Hi friends, welcome back to Sew HoneyBea. In today's video, it is part 2 of the Sophisticated Clutch Sew Along. I was so happy to see so many entries for part 1, and congratulations also to the winner. And it'll be the same for this week also, where we take all of your entries and spin for a winner at the end of the week. Now for today's video, we will be sewing the interior of the clutch. Now, these series of videos have a number of details in them. I'm going step by step because I know some of you are beginners. What I'd like to say to those of you who are beginners in bag making and doing this sew along with us, welcome to the world of bag making. And for those of you who have been making bags for a number of years, well, I'm glad you're here too. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about this week's featured sponsor, and that is Whimsical Fabric Designs. Now, you're definitely going to want to go and check out that website. There are a number of pre-order items, all in different bases, as well as retail. So whether you want to get something this week or wait for something special, she's got everything there for you. Now, here are some of the vinyls that she sent me. You may be wondering which one of these vinyls I will be using for the next tutorial for Sophisticated Crafts Designs. Well, are you ready? Here it is. All the links and all the stuff is in the description below. Now, I also want to thank our other two sponsors, which are My Punk Broidery and Sew Weird Fabric. Now, the sponsor for part 3 will be Sew Weird Fabric. So you'll want to come back and check that one out too. Now you may be wondering, how do you enter into the drawing? Now Jassy over at Sophisticated Crafts Design Facebook group is going to be opening up another thread. Now this one will be for week 2 for the interior portion of this clutch. Now take a picture of your whip, which is your work in progress for this week. Go over to Sophisticated Crafts Design's Facebook group and add your picture to the thread that Jassy has designated for week 2. Be sure that it's the right one. And then again, at the end of the week, I will go live and I will spin for a winner. Now, I wanted to make a note at the beginning of this video. In part 1, piece F, which is our card slots, you will notice I did not interface that piece, which did fine when I was sewing it on my domestic machine. But in sewing this clutch for this sew along, I'm using my industrial machine. So there was difficulty in sewing those card slots and top stitching them. So I wanted to make a note. If you are using an industrial machine or a heavy duty machine, you may just want to go ahead and interface that piece. So since I did not interface that in part 1, I wanted to stay true to the sew along and I did not interface it. So I made do and made it work, and it came out just fine. So I'm going to share those tips with you of what I did in order to get my machine to sew through a thinner fabric. Now again, for those of you who are using domestic machines, you won't have any problem. I have everything here already for my zipper and slip pocket. I have my number 5 zipper with the zipper pull, my bag tag, my zipper and slip pocket, which is piece G. Remember, we're doing the fussy cut on this one, so I have it in 2 pieces. If you are not doing the fussy cut, you will have it in 1 piece. Then I have my inner pocket lining, which is piece H. Now the pattern has us starting off with our inner pocket lining and placing our zipper on there. But I am actually going to start with piece G first. Okay, and I will show you why in a second. Let me set that aside. Now I am doing the fussy cut for our slip pocket and zipper pocket, our panel. I have the Annex 1 instructions, which is additional to our pattern. So I have this here. It is not a pattern piece that we cut out, but it's for the measurement reference to piece F and G after we assemble the pockets and the zipper. And it also acts as zipper pattern for piece G, which we are doing now. So I'm going to get the fussy cut for my slip pocket, and I'm going to put that aside for right now. I have marked centers on all 4 sides because you want to make sure that this is going the right way. If I turn this way, you will notice that here it is not. So make sure that you've got this going the right way, okay? Because this is actually a rectangle and not a square. So now, turn it over to the back and match up your centers along the top. And remember, this isn't going to be the same size, so just ignore the fact that this is longer here, okay? So now I'm going to take my marker. You can use chalk or anything that you have in order to mark this piece here. Okay, so now that marked it really well. Okay, so now I'm going to set this aside. Now what I want to do is I want to get a ruler and put a mark down the center and then 2 triangles at the end. Okay, now I want to grab my small scissors. You can also use a seam ripper, but you want to be very careful here. You just want to cut going down the center and clip all the way to those corners there, making sure you do not go beyond your markings. Now I'm going to fold this back right on that line. If you are using a water-resistant canvas or an Oxford canvas like I am, you can just finger press this. If you use an iron, make sure that it is just on a very low setting. Okay, so now, the reason why I started here was because if you are using a cotton or a canvas or anything that frays, this Oxford canvas doesn't fray at all. But I do want to just reinforce those corners there just in case it does. Okay, so now I'm going to bring my items back and I'm going to clip this back on there, as well as my bag tag so I do not lose that. Now I'm going to work on piece H, which is my inner pocket lining. Now this piece here is in fact a square, so you don't have to really look at the orientation of it. Okay, then I want to burn the ends. Now I have my piece H, which is my pocket lining, and my zipper. I have both of them right side up. So now I want to clip these across the top. Now I want to baste the zipper to the pocket lining using a 1/8 inch seam allowance across the top. Okay, so I went ahead and basted the top. Now I want to grab the other side of my pocket lining, bring it up to the zipper, and I also want to sew that using a 1/8 inch seam allowance across the top. And make sure that your edges match up on the sides right here. Okay? So now I want to pin that across the top. And now sew it. Now the zipper is now sewn onto our pocket lining. Okay, so now I have my pocket lining, which is piece H, and the top part of piece G with the zipper panel. Now you can also put a piece of double stick tape across the top here, and I will show you. Okay. Now I have my piece H, which is my pocket lining, and I've removed the double stick tape along the top. Now I want this on here. Let's see, I want my zipper to close going from right to left. So this is going to go on there like that. So I want to sew the bottom portion first. So my zipper is still going from right to left. And let me move my zipper pull out of the way. And now I want to center this as much as possible on here and stick it down, making sure that it is straight as possible. Okay, so now my piece H, which is my pocket lining, is out of the way, and now I'm going to drop my needle in this corner, do not back stitch, and I'm going to top stitch across here all the way to this corner, and do not back stitch it because I'm going to pull my threads to the back and tie them off. I want to hold my threads in the back, especially now, because I do not want my threads to get tangled into that seam. I want to cut my ties long enough so that I can pull them to the back. So now I want to pull up on my thread, and a loop will form, and then you can pull that loop to the back, so that what it does is it pulls both threads to the back, and then you can tie it off. And then in the front, what it does is you will not have to see a back stitch. And then clip your threads. And then take your lighter and just barely just tap those threads. Okay, just like that, and it seals them in. I want to remove the double stick tape off the top, and now I want to place the top portion of my zipper across the top of my panel. And really make sure it's on there really good. I dropped my needle right where I ended the stitching on the bottom. Now I've sewn across, and now I'm going to go across the top. Move my zipper pull. Now remember, don't back stitch. I almost back stitched there. This, and pull that thread to the other side, and then tie both of them off. So now, again, I want to take my lighter and just like those threads. But don't catch them on fire. Okay, so now our zipper is completely on there, and you can see we have a zipper pocket. Now, do not close up the sides yet. Okay, so just leave it like that for now. Now, if you're not doing the fussy cut, this panel is completely done. But if you are, you're going to grab your slip pocket piece, and first of all, find the center. And now this is the top of my slip pocket. This is the bottom of my pocket panel. So I want to put them right sides together, matching up those centers. Okay? So again, this is the top, this is the bottom. I want to put those together right there. And then get a couple of clips and clip that. Now I'm going to sew across here using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, and then I want to press this very little on my waterproof canvas because there's a plastic coating to it. So now let me turn off my iron and set that aside. So now my slip pocket is attached on there. I have pressed the waterproof canvas going towards my slip pocket. So now I want to fold this up right at that point there so that now they are wrong sides together. So I have the wrong side of my panel and the wrong side of my slip pocket, and they are going together. Now I'm going to top stitch across here. Okay, so there is our slip pocket attached. Okay, so now this is the back of our panel. Now in the annex instructions on number 18, it is going to give you a measurement. You are going to measure from the top to here and mark using that measurement. That is your fold line. So now you fold it with right sides together, finger press, and then I'm going to put my panel down. Okay, really press that down. And now that is my slip pocket right there. Now I've put side clips there. Let me put another one right there. Now when I cut this out, you'll remember that I cut my panel for my fussy cut a little larger. So now I've got to get this paper here, line it up, take it over to my cutting mat, and cut it down to the exact size that I want it. Okay, so I'll do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and cut this whole thing down, and you can see there that it's the exact size that I want it. Now if you go to your pattern instructions for the Miss Classy, if you look at instruction number 17, it is going to give you the measurement from top to bottom of what this panel should be. Okay, or you can use this paper here. Put that up there. Now what I want to do is I want to go and close off these side pockets so that this is completely closed off. And then after I sew this here, I'm going to trim this zipper away. Okay? Now I want to really reinforce this pocket because I want to make sure that there isn't any problems with it down the road. So now I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other pocket side. Okay, so now my pocket sides are sewn and my pocket is now complete. Okay, now I want to add this to the right side of my panel, just below the top part of my slip pocket here. So I'm going to add that right there. Now I'm going to base this on there using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and burn off those thread ends. Okay, now my next step is to completely sew down these sides here, base them down, so that this slip pocket doesn't open out anymore. So I want to put my zipper pull to the center, and now I'm going to base down the sides. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Now I want to call your attention to something. You see how here this sewed just fine and it basted all that down just fine? But look at this side over here, what happened. You see how my zipper panel is a little bit shy of the slip pocket panel? The reason why is when I went and ironed this down for this portion to put in my zipper, what happened is this shrunk up. You can see how it's a little wavy. So that's a lot of times the reason why I will cut my pieces a little bit bigger, but this piece I actually cut it just the right size that the pattern called for. So you want to take note of stuff like that. If you are going to use a waterproof canvas or anything like that, or even interfacing does the same exact thing. So it's always better to cut something a little bit bigger and then cut it down to size once it's all sewn together. Okay, so I want to take care of all my threads. Okay, and for this I am just going to go ahead and leave it like that, and I'm going to clip it right there. Okay, and I'm going to remember that when I sew on my side panels to make sure that that stays the right size. Now our slip pocket and zipper panel is complete. So now I want to get piece F, which is our card slot pockets. Okay, so now here's the top of my pattern piece. So now go to page 12 of your instructions, and at the bottom of page 12 there's a list of measurements. The bottom is in centimeters, the top is in imperial or inches. Okay, start at your top and mark all of those markings all the way down to the bottom. Okay, which I've already done here. Now I'm going to start at the top, and the top measurement is 3/8 of an inch. And now that measurement, you aren't going to fold or anything. You're just marking that because that is actually our seam allowance. So I'm going to actually snip every single one of these little markings all the way down on both sides, ignoring the top marking. But the reason why I'm snipping these is so that when I go to fold them, I will be able to identify where each of those markings are, whether I'm doing right sides together or wrong sides together. Now again, the top marking is our seam allowance, so we're not going to fold that. We're not going to do anything with it. Our second marking, it says that we are going to fold that right sides together. So this is my wrong side. This is the right side, so I want to fold that right sides together right on that little mark. Okay, so I want to put it right sides together, get my iron, and press it. Now, my second line, it says that I'm going to fold that wrong sides together. So now I'm going to flip this up, open this out, and I'm going to look for that little slit that we just cut. So it's right there, and then on this side, if I can find it, it is right there. Okay, so now I'm going to put that down like that, and now I'm going to press that fold. And now when I'm doing this, I want to also make sure that my sides are right with each other right here. Okay, so now our next line, which is here, it says that we are going to fold that right sides together. So again, I want to find my little clipping on both ends. Okay, so that one was right sides together. Now my next one is going to be wrong sides together. So now I want to, again, flip it over, and I want to find the next clipping, which is right there. Let me make sure. Yes, that's it. I want to fold that. Fold it over here. Then I want to press that fold. So now I can see that my card slots are starting to come into view. So you see how I'm getting card slots there? And now that one was our last one. Okay, so I don't want to turn off my iron just yet, but now what I want to do is I want to start placing my folds right where I pressed them. Okay, and so now you can definitely see the card slots starting to appear. Now, if you are sewing the Miss Classy, you are going to have 4 card slots, which is a total of 8. 4 on this side and 4 on this side. Okay, so now I'm taking my iron and going over those folds really good. And you can see that my piece is a lot longer, okay? I cut it a lot longer than I needed it just to make sure. It's always easier to cut fabric off than to add it. Okay, for card slots you'd have to do it over again. Okay, so now let me turn off my iron, set it aside. Okay, so now I just want to clip this on the sides, and while it's still very hot, I want to move it as little as possible because I want this fabric to find a memory where the folds are. Okay, so now I want to grab my card and put it in here and check and make sure that they're pretty much all the same, and they are. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now my fabric has already cooled down completely. So now I can actually fold this out and that memory is already in this fabric. Now I'm going to top stitch at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now my machine definitely did not like that this fabric is so thin. And I am not going to backstitch on this edge, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my nail through there. So what it's doing is it's pushing all the gathers to the end. And since I didn't backstitch on this side, it's doing just fine, okay? So I'll just do that again. So let me see if this will be okay. And it will, but I'm going to have to iron it after each portion. Now there are a total of 8 card slots for the Miss Classy and 6 for the Miss Chic. So I'm doing the Miss Classy, so there will be 4 top stitching folds that I will have to do. Now if you're using a domestic machine, you shouldn't have any problems with this, or if you interfaced this here. If I would have interfaced it, it would have added bulk to this fabric, and then I would have been able to sew it with my machine a lot easier. Okay, so now I'm going to fold these up again where they should be. Remember, there's a total of 4 of them for the Miss Classy and 3 for the Miss Chic. Now I want to press it in place completely. Okay, so now I have blue tape, which is like a painter's tape. I'm going to put 1 strip on that side and 1 strip on this side. So now I've got this paper and I've put it on here matching up the center. So now this is also for G and F. So I want them both the same size. So I'm going to take this over to my cutting table and cut this down because I want it to be the same size. The zipper and slip pocket panel and the card slot panel. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this down and then I will be right back. So now I've cut this down using our template in our pattern. Okay, now if you are not going to use this template, you can go to number 26 in the pattern instructions and you can find the measurement of the height of this panel here. Okay, we are on number 27 and number 28 on our instructions. I have the center marking up here. Now I have to mark my center down here. Then we are going to sew here at a 1/8 inch seam allowance, 2 lines. And what that does is it separates the card slots from each other. So I'm going to first find my center at the bottom. So now I'm going to start at the bottom, following this fold line here, which is exact center, and I am going to go all the way to my top card slot pocket. Then I'm going to take one stitch over and then go back down. Okay? Take those gathers out before I sew going the other way. And again, the only reason why this is happening is because my fabric is so thin. Okay. Leave a long tail. Cut that off. And now I'm going to use my fingernail to take those gathers. When I go to make this again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I interface these card slots. So now I want to baste down my edges. Okay, so now I've removed my tape and I'm taking out those gathers and then clipping my threads. Again, removing the tape, taking out my gathers, and then clipping my threads. Okay, so now I want to press this really good on both sides. And what pressing does also is that it locks those stitches in place down the center as well. Okay, so now I'm on number 31 in our instructions on page 15. Now I want them to be joined at the bottom. So you can see here my card slots are going this way, so this is the bottom. My zipper pocket is up on the top, so this is the bottom. So now I want to put both of these right sides together. And I want to clip the bottom. And now I'm going to sew across the bottom using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay. Now normally you would open out this seam here, but because I need the bulk on this side, because there is no interfacing, I'm going to actually just press this seam to the card slot side. And what that is doing for me is it is adding bulk to this side so that when I go to top stitch this, it should just do fine. So now I want to top stitch right here on both sides. So now I'm going to clip those threads. Now I'm going to go the other way. Okay, so now I'm going to get my iron back out and press this again. Okay. So because I didn't back stitch any of these, what I want to do is I just want to burn the ends of them so that they do not come apart. And try not to catch things on fire. Ay, ay, ay. The joys of sewing. Okay, so now my threads now are locked in. Okay, so now I want to get piece E, which is my card slot panel lining. Okay, so I want to put right sides together, matching them at the top and at the bottom. Now, if your seam allowance was sewn correctly at a 3/8 inch, they should both be the same size. Okay, so now, because I'm having issues with this fabric here being so thin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this end face down so that the thicker fabric is on top. So now I'm going to sew the two short edges using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to do the other side, again using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And now I want to make sure where my zipper pull is. Make sure that it's out of the way, because I do not want to run it over. Okay, so now I want to clip my edges, making sure not to clip my seams. Okay. And now I'm going to turn this right side out. Right on that edge that we just sewed. And I'm going to finger press it because I do not want to iron my waterproof canvas, or water resistant, I guess I should say, canvas, because it has a plastic coating in it. That's what makes it water resistant. Okay, so now I want to top stitch across here and across here using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I want to get my side panels, which are J, and you should have 2 of them. Now remember, in part 1, even though there was a pattern piece for it, what I did was I cut it a little larger on the side and on the top. Now I know for a fact that this piece here is the exact width that I want, because remember, we cut it down to this size. So now when I add these panels to the side and sew them on, then again I will take it and I will cut it down to the exact size that I need it. So now I am going to find my center. Since it is cut a little bit longer, or a little taller, I guess I should say, I'm going to find the centers and match up my centers so the extra fabric will be distributed through both sides. So I want to put that center seam right at this center seam right here, because I know that is the center of my panel. And then do the same thing to the top and the center. And the same thing to this side as well. Matching up that center point. Now, if you used your pattern piece to cut out piece J, these 2 side panels, you are going to have a 3/8 inch overhang on the top and the bottom. So I have these right sides together with my center panel and my 2 side panels, the right sides together. Now I'm going to sew a seam allowance using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I want to finger press this whole thing open. If you are not using Oxford canvas, water resistant canvas, vinyl, if you are able to iron it, go ahead and press these down. Now just under instruction number 42, you will see that there is a measurement that this center panel should be. So make sure that that measurement is correct. And I did, and it is. Okay, so now I'm going to set this aside for right now. Now this is D, which is my main lining. Okay, so now in your instructions, you will notice that there is a measurement that she gives you to mark along here. Okay, so go ahead and mark that. And now put a little snip right at that marking, just barely in there so that we can see this from the right side, because this is the wrong side of the fabric that I marked here. So now this is right side up, and now I can see where I just snipped it. Okay, so now I want to set this aside for right now, and I want to bring back this piece. Now remember, I cut piece J, the side panels, a little wider and a little taller. So what I want to do is I now want to cut it to the right size. I want to get the measurement right here for the width of this and then cut it down. Okay, so now I have piece D. First of all, let me find my centers for this here. Okay, so now I want to take my centers and I want to fold it down right there and put a crease in it. Okay, so now when I open this up, now I can see where my center is. Okay, now I want to find my center here. I want to put a pin right there so that I will be able to see where that center point is. And then do the same thing on here. And I'm doing the center not from this point, but from my point of my completed panel. Okay, so now I want to, again, make that crease right at that point where we had marked it. Okay, so now I can see where that crease is, and I want to lay this portion right on that fold, matching the center. And I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place. Now I want to turn it around. Move that out of the way. And do the same thing on this side. Fold it right where that marking is, where that crease. And so that I can see where it is. Match up the inside of that pin right there. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to pin through all of this, but I'm going to try. Oh, I did it. Okay. So now that's where my edges are. Okay. Okay, so now I want to clean up these threads here so that I don't have any issues with them later on. And I want to push this to the side and clip it. Okay, so now on the top, these pieces that are overlapping, what I now want to do is I want to fold them down on themselves and down inside of there, just like that, making sure that that is a nice and straight fold right there. Okay, so now I want to do the same thing to this side. So now I want to crease that right on itself, fold it down right on itself so it's straight. Okay. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to start at this edge here, work my way to the top, top stitch this portion down, then pivot, top stitch all this down, all the way down, then pivot this way, and then baste across. Now all of those seam allowances, even though it's top stitching on this side, basting on this side, it's still all 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing on this side here. Need to make sure it is right on there. Okay, I'm going to remove my pin. And now look at, see how that point there came out very sharp, and that lined up right with this top stitching here. Okay, so now you can see how we have our slip pocket here on this side and our slip pocket here on this side. Okay, so now what we've got to do is we've got to divide these two pockets because it's just, it goes all the way through. So now I have to sew 3/8 of an inch away from this center point. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew that, but instead of doing 3/8 of an inch, because my presser foot is actually 1/4 of an inch width, I'm going to go ahead and just do it at 1/4 of an inch. Drop my needle right where I want it, go forward 1 stitch, back 1 stitch, 1 more stitch. Take 2 stitches, put it right where I want it, go forward 1 stitch, back 1 stitch. Okay. Okay, so now let me clip my threads. Well, actually, let me pull on my threads from this side because it looks like this one here wants to come that side. Okay, so now I can clip my threads, clip this one here. Okay, now I want to bring my threads. Okay, and bring it on this side too as well. Okay, so this is the inside of our clutch here. You can see we have our inner zipper pocket and it is complete. We have our inner slip pocket and it is complete. We have our bag tag here, and then on the other side we have our credit card slots. Now for the Ms. Classy there are a total of 8 card slots, but for the Ms. Chic there are only 6. Then you have your slip pocket on this side and your slip pocket on that side. Okay, so now that's the end of part 2. It has been a real joy to do this sew along with you, and Sophisticated Crafts Designs as well. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors for the sew along. We couldn't have done it without you. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you over at the Facebook group. Until then, bye.